Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of the hour. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer enter Chequers for their meeting after a 15-car motorcade escorted Trump from Marine One. The two leaders will hold talks before a joint news conference later today. Israel opens a new 48-hour route for civilians to leave Gaza City as its ground offensive intensifies, with the new death toll now above 65,000. Hundreds of thousands remain trapped, fearing dangers on the road, starvation in the south and permanent displacement. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi calls Israel an enemy for the first time since before Sadat's 1977 visit to Jerusalem. He warns its actions in Gaza threaten Egypt's security and the future of regional peace deals. Syrian Foreign Minister Assad Shibani arrives in Washington today. The first such visit in over 25 years. He will visit US lawmakers on lifting sanctions as Damascus seeks reintegration and pursues security talks with Israel. Teachers, rail workers, medics and students strike across France in a nationwide protest against President Emmanuel Macron's austerity plans. Unions demand more spending on public services, higher taxes on the wealthy and a reversal on pension reforms. Thai troops fire tear gas and rubber bullets at Cambodian villagers in a disputed border zone, injuring at least 29 people, including monks. It is the most serious violence since cross-border fighting was halted in July. UK counter-terror police arrest 2 men and women in Essex on suspicion of spying for Russia. Their 3 are being held in London under the National Security Act for assisting a foreign intelligence service. The United Arab Emirates is considering downgrading diplomatic ties with Israel if Prime Minister Netanyahu annexes part or all of the West Bank. Such a move would be a major blow to the Abraham Accords, a flagship Trump-era achievement. We start this hour in Europe, where France is witnessing one of its biggest strike days in recent years, with unions mounting a show of unity to challenge Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. They're demanding action on wages, pensions and public services, as well as a rethink of planned budget cuts. The unrest comes just days after President Emmanuel Macron appointed Lecornu, his third Prime Minister in a year, following bitter parliamentary disputes that toppled François Beirut and Michel Barnier. Leftist leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon have seized on the anger and called for Macron's resignation.
Toute action violente ne sert qu'une seule et unique personne, Monsieur Retailleau, qui a besoin de la violence, qui a besoin des poubelles qui brûlent, qui a besoin de tout ça pour affirmer son rôle de sauveur de je ne sais quoi. En réalité, cet homme est une provocation ambulante. Et le président de la République ferait bien de le ramener à la raison. Qu'a-t-on à faire d'un dirigeant politique national qui passe son temps, vous avez vu à quoi, exciter les uns contre les autres, à se taire quand il y a certains crimes islamophobes ou racistes qui n'ont pas l'air de le déranger plus que ça. Ensuite, nous met en cause, je vous invite tous aussi à la maîtrise de ce que vous pouvez répandre. Quand même, cet homme a osé dire qu'il nous accusait solennellement des violences qui sont commises contre des policiers, qui sont des faits de droit commun, et pas des faits politiques. Il l'a fait, il a osé le faire. Cet homme est odieux, il représente une forme de notre pays, raciste, rabougrie, haineuse, méfiante contre tout et tout le monde, et qui donne continuellement le sentiment de détester la vie.
Now, union leaders say the strikes show workers' power to shut down the economy as frustrations mount over inflation and the rising cost of living. Police say some 800,000 people are expected to join demonstrations nationwide, disrupting schools, trains and air travel. And in Marseille, clashes broke out as police used tear gas to disperse crowds. Let's take a listen in to some of the protesters.
C'est dans le principe de faire voir au pouvoir du gouvernement qu'on est présent, qu'on en a marre, qu'on en a ras-le-bol d'être taxé à gogo, qu'on en a marre d'avoir le 15 du mois des difficultés à finir nos fins de mois, etc. En gros, je vous dis, aujourd'hui, entre guillemets, pourquoi travailler si jamais on ne peut pas s'en sortir?
Macron, le mot d'ordre de la journée, il est assez simple. C'est grève, blocage, Macron dégage. Pourquoi? Parce que le problème dans la situation, c'est Emmanuel Macron. C'est lui qui s'acharne à nommer gouvernement de droite sur gouvernement de droite alors qu'il a perdu les élections, que tous ces gouvernements sont illégitimes et que plus personne ne veut de sa politique mortifère. Donc il y a une solution pour débloquer la situation, c'est le départ du président de la République, sa démission ou sa destitution. C'est lui le problème. Tant qu'il est là, rien ne se résoudra.
Now we leave Europe next and move to the Middle East, where the expansion of the Israeli operation in Gaza and the prospects of the annexation of the West Bank have sparked reactions from around the world. There are reports that the UAE is not currently considering severing ties with Israel completely. However, it is expected that the UAE may downgrade diplomatic ties with Israel if Prime Minister Netanyahu's government annexes part or all of the West Bank. An official from the Emirati Foreign Ministry stated that any annexation by Israel would be considered a red line. The UAE and Israel formalized their relations under the Abraham Accords, mediated by the first Trump administration in September of 2020. Since then, the UAE has not indicated any intention to retreat from these accords. We're now joined by Shruti Dasgupta, who is an international affairs expert, and she joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us here on the programme. Shruti, just briefly, before we get into this, could you tell us a little bit more about the Abraham Accords and what diplomatic relations were like before them between Israel and the rest of the Middle East?
The rest of the Middle East it does not look very positively towards Israel. It is viewed as outsider implant into the Arab world. So they are not happy with its presence. And to normalize relations, the Abraham Accords was President Trump's baby project, which he's still trying to push towards the other Arab nations. Of course, the invasion in Gaza is something that is kind of put a halt on all diplomatic relations that could have resumed under the aegis of Abraham Accords. One of the primary clauses of the Abraham Accords was that Israel promised not to plan any annexation or attacks towards the West Bank for 4 years. Now that deadline has come and gone in 2024, and we've seen an escalation on all sides of Israel. The accords as a whole are a way to ensure that Israel has good relationships with each and every Arab nation. Trade should flow, diplomacy should be conducted, and the tensions in the Middle East, where most of the oil reserves of the world are locked in, is reduced, and prosperity grows. But this particular accord has not found favor in a lot of hardliner nations. I think only 2 other nations beyond Qatar have, UAE have signed up for this. And so they are not, I think Morocco is one of them, and the others have not found favor for it. And with the increasing assaults in Gaza, I don't see them coming back to at least this version of Abraham Accords.
Yes, Shruti, and what can you tell us about the new E1 plans to expand Israeli settlements in the West Bank, which the Emirati officials may be referring to?
Yes, this stems from a Smotrich's statement stating that that he wants maximum territory with minimum population from the West Bank itself. He feels that allowing Palestinian identity anywhere near and around Israel is a threat to the national sovereignty of Israel. And so he hopes, apart from I think 6 particular cities from the West Bank, he had displayed a large map where he had he had encouraged Netanyahu to look at the map and plan accordingly, leave just about 6 cities and of those 6 cities, most of the Palestinian or the Palestinian identifying Arabs should be pushed out into the other 6 cities, and that land should be kept, and probably kind of uniting the Judea and Samaria narrative that Israel and its supporters have been speaking about. So from Smotrich statements, it shows that they are kind of laying the public narrative out, and this is exactly what UAE is afraid of. One, the Abraham Accords guarantee of 4 years is over. 2, Gaza city is almost pummeled with the increase of attacks over there. So there have been really offensive statements coming from some of the officials again. They are saying that we've spent the money on the war, and now we need to see how we can make the most profit out of the land that we're going to occupy in Gaza. So with looking at those particular aspects and with Smotrich's plan, UAE have come down to the brass tacks of it, that we do not trust Israel. We have no faith in them. The attack on Doha in the name of Hamas is something that shows that anywhere Israel finds or suspects a threat to itself, it would attack, and UAE is not comfortable with it. And that is why they have said that they would probably back away from ties, as in the Abraham Accords and any other further diplomatic relations, which are already on the lower simmer since 2023. They would probably end all of it if any action on ground is seen towards accomplishing Smotrich's plan.
Shruti, why do Israel think that they have a right to this land? Of course, this, under international law, is Palestinian territory. What is the backstory of this situation?
Well, then we have to go back to really biblical times, where we say where we hear about how the Jews were run out of the promised land and Jerusalem is theirs, and of course that is something that Turkey has now taken claim of. Also Netanyahu has also made claims that we are here, we will not leave. So it comes down from the promised land that is also unfortunately part of the Old Testament of Christianity, where they say that the Jews must return to the promised land. So this is probably part of that entire campaign, for which the greater Israel propaganda that was somewhere around the late 1800s, I'm forgetting the name of the person who spoke about it, but he was a very I hate to use the term, but Zionist ideology, where they wanted a greater Israel, that is the older territory of Judea as such, and that is what they want to establish. So this is where these plans, these ambitions come from, whenever every one of them want to go back to touch to their civilizational roots, and they want to turn it into current political identity. Civilizational roots are fun and nice and good to know, but turning them into modern day scenarios is something that would violate a large number of human rights, international laws, and would lead to a lot of war that would not be good for anybody living in that land or is associated with that land.
Yes, Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us. We do move on, but stay in the region, where on the 1-year anniversary of the deadly Israeli operation in Lebanon, thousands gathered in Beirut to mark the tragic event, with protests erupting throughout the city. The demonstrations saw people from various walks of life coming together. Let's listen in to what some of them had to say.
أنا فقدت عيني 2، صرت كفيف كلي، بس نحن بنقول تعافينا روحيا من أول نهار، تعافينا اجتماعيا بتكافل هذا المجتمع اللي حوالينا، نحن متعافيين.
للاستعانة بخبرات وكفاءات القانونيين اللبنانيين للادعاء على الكيان الإسرائيلي أمام الجهات الدولية المختصة.
شباب جرحى البيجر في البعض منهم شاركوا بالمعارك، يعني لا بعيونهم قدروا يوقفون لما راحت عيونهم، ولا بتقطيع أصابعهم قدروا يوقفون إنه يكونوا مع الشباب على الجبهات وقت
جريمة الباجر هي مؤشر العدو الإسرائيلي، هو بيقول إنه حضر لها من 15 سنة، وبالتالي توفرت النية الجرمية وتوفرت التحضيرات الجرمية للعدو الإسرائيلي لكي يفتك أكثر من 50,000 كما كان يقول وما كان يطمع.
Now, on this day last year, thousands of explosives, rigged pages used by Hezbollah members across Lebanon detonated, killing 39 members and injuring thousands of Hezbollah and civilians. A year later, the attack, Hezbollah has yet to uncover how Israel's Mossad infiltrated its network to place the explosives. The operation, considered one of the largest covert operations in modern history, marked a significant blow to Hezbollah's dominance in the region. We now move over from the Middle East to the world of trade, where European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasised the EU's need to diversify trade relationships, particularly with countries like India, Canada and Mexico, due to rising US import tariffs. Speaking at a conference with German business leaders, she announced the EU aims to finalise a trade deal with various nations. Let's take a listen in to what the EU President had to say.
Wir sollten aber auch bedenken, das ist mir sehr wichtig, dass 80% unseres Handels mit Ländern außerhalb der USA stattfindet. 80%. Und deshalb ist es so wichtig, dieses Netz an Handelspartnerschaften weltweit weiter zu spannen. Wir haben in den letzten 9 Monaten erfolgreich Abkommen abgeschlossen mit Mercosur, Mexiko, der Schweiz. Wenn man sich das Mercosur-Abkommen einmal anschaut, das ist ein Markt von 770 Millionen Verbraucherinnen und Verbrauchern. Das ist ein Viertel des globalen Produktes, des Bruttoinlandsproduktes. Das Abkommen wird dazu sorgen, dass die Ausfuhrzölle erheblich sinken. Zölle für die Automobilindustrie werden schrittweise völlig abgeschafft. 770 Millionen, das ist ein Markt, den wir uns erobern sollten.
We're now joined by Peter Cardillo. He's a chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, and he joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us here on the programme. Peter, how significant is Ursula von der Leyen's push to diversify trade away from US dependence? She there cited countries like India, Canada and Mexico. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, that's part of retaliation in a sense that, trade deals still have to be announced by some of the major companies. And so we're beginning to see reaction from other countries. And we saw that with the BRIC nations. If you recall, when they had the Shanghai conference, they showed a united front. And I think at this point, perhaps the EU now is trying to do the same thing. And I think that serves not necessarily as a point, in fact, to move away from the United States. I don't think that's the case at all. But I think it sends a message to the United States that trade deals need to be worked out at lower levels. Otherwise, there are other options. Again, I don't think that this is a statement that indicates that either the EU or the BRICS nations or other nations are ready to pull out of the United States totally. I don't think so at all. I think that's, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think it's certainly not doable because foreign nations need our trade as we need their trade. They need their products as we need our products.
Yes, Peter, many from the EU saw this deal as a very bad one. It was, of course, the US imposed a 15% tariff on most EU goods, with some excluded goods, including aircraft and generic pharmaceuticals, some, including steel and aluminium, remaining at 50% tariff. The big one, however, was the $600 billion investment in the United States by 2028. Do you think the EU is wise to be possibly looking at these other markets given this trade deal and the criticism that it has got?
Oh, sure, I think so. But, again, I don't expect, and I've said this in the past, and I'm going to say it again this morning, that I don't expect these high tariffs to stick. And I expect that there will be lower tariffs coming into fruition. It's just a matter of time. And I think, the political aspect of the trade of the tariffs is probably nearing a high point, which means that somewhere along the line, these nations that have been hit with high tariffs will eventually make a deal with the United States, in particular, by the way, India.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter Cardillo, for joining us here on the programme. Absolute pleasure to have you on, as always. We now move on and back over to Europe, where US President Donald Trump met British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Chequers during his second state visit to the UK, focusing on global issues and renewing the quote-unquote special relationship between the two countries. Trump was seen shaking hands with the King at Windsor, describing him as a great gentleman and a great king. A joint news conference with Starmer is expected later, with political editor Chris Mason warning it could be a roller coaster. At a state banquet last night, Trump called the state visit one of the highest honours of his life, while the King commended the president's personal commitment to finding solutions to some of the world's most intractable conflicts. Okay, we now move over to the Indo-Pacific, where Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Hayashi, speaking as a candidate in the ruling Liberal Democratic Party leadership race, stated that Japan's economic conditions have now allowed the Bank of Japan to raise interest rates, signalling the country's economy has now entered a new phase. Hayashi, reflecting on the nation's economic history, has also noted that Abenomics, the economic policies introduced by former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, was a necessary response during Japan's period of deflation. Hayashi emphasized that Japan's current inflation is driven by cost-push factors, not demand-driven, and underlined the importance of the country's consumption tax as a vital revenue source to fund social welfare expenses. Okay, we're now joined by Dr. Asta Chadha, and he joins us live from Ritsumeikan University in Japan, and he joins us live from Kyoto in Japan. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit more about this leading candidate here, Hirokazu Hayashi, and why he is so popular?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, Hayashi has been pretty much in the race for quite some time, and people are looking at him because he has been pretty much a staunch supporter of Abenomics, and he's been defending it. That being said, he is not the only one in that party who's doing that. In fact, the mood of the LDP, of this ruling party, is very different from the mood of the nation here in Japan. So if you look at the numbers, Hayashi is not even close to being the most popular candidate. So the most popular candidate within the party is actually Shinjiro Koizumi, who happens to be from the legacy of previous Japanese prime ministers. And if you look at the numbers that just recently came in within Japan, again, Hayashi is backed by Sanae Takaichi, who, if she wins, will become Japan's first female prime minister. But on the note where you mentioned the economy, I think Hayashi's policies do tend to, in a way, align with those of Sanae Takaichi, because she also has been a supporter of Abenomics, and she believes that whatever is necessary to stimulate the economy must be done, including aggressive government spending and monetary easing. Now you compare that to what internally the LDP would want to support, which is a new face with fresh ideas, is Koizumi, and his ideas are completely different. He is leaning more towards fiscal reform and addressing Japan's climbing government debt, which today, as of now, stands at a mounting 239 to 234.9 or 235% of global debt to Japanese debt to GDP, which is quite high. So I mean, looking at their different opinions on how they want to handle the economy, I mean that does make to the sensitivity of the voters. But let's not forget that in Japan, I mean, you never really know. So who's the most popular candidate within the party might not even make it to the top, depending on who is voted for the most in Japan.
Dr. Chadha, thank you very much for that brilliant analysis. Pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on to some news from the technological world, where Meta has launched its latest smart glasses, which it claims are the first consumer-ready spectacles with a built-in display. Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, introduced the latest product. This smart glass from Meta is an updated version of earlier versions and is widely seen as a bid to close the gap in the AI race against rivals like OpenAI and Alphabet. Zuckerberg called it a perfect device for intercation with so-called superintelligence. Zuckerberg stated that access to AI capabilities like the one in the smart glass make one smarter, communicate better, improvement of the memory and the senses. Let's take a listen in.
It's large enough to watch a video or, read a thread of messages. It appears in one eye, it's slightly off center so it doesn't block your view, and it disappears after a few seconds when it's not in use so it doesn't distract. Glasses are the ideal form factor for personal superintelligence because they let you stay present in the moment while getting access to all of these AI capabilities that make you smarter, help you communicate better, improve your memory, improve your senses, and more. This is Meta Ray-Ban Display. These are glasses with the classic style that you'd expect from Ray-Ban, but they're the first AI glasses with a high-resolution display and a whole new way to interact with them. The Meta is large enough to watch a video or, read a thread of messages. It appears in one eye, it's slightly off center so it doesn't block your view, and it disappears after a few seconds when it's not in use so it doesn't distract you. Replacing the keyboard, mouse, touchscreen, buttons, dials, with the ability to send signals from your brain with little muscle movements that the neural band will pick up so you can silently control your glasses with barely perceptible movements. The Meta neural band is a huge scientific breakthrough. We have built a neural interface into a durable, lightweight, comfortable, and good-looking wristband with 18 hours of battery life and is water resistant.
Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.